How many of you in this room, when you were in elementary school, remember the Red Ribbon Week, the Just Say No program? Finally, how many of you remember thinking that when you were little, if you did things like smoke weed, you would die? Well, I remember I did. Today I'm not only going to bring to light that marijuana is not as harmful as you think, but also advocate the possession of marijuana should be legalized. I intend to do this by describing how many Americans were brainwashed by the United States government, giving them false facts and replacing them with real unbiased data. Also, I will briefly talk to you about arguments against marijuana and give myself the chance to explain many of the misconceptions about marijuana are either exaggerated or completely fabricated. Now, I know you might be thinking to yourself, here's another pothead trying to preach his stony logic on you. However, I encourage you to put aside these preconceived notions and let me show you the evidence I have to support the claim. First, why marijuana is not as bad as you think. Starting in the 80s and moving to the 90s, the Just Say No campaign became a widely popular way to teach children to stay off drugs at a very young age. This program was headed first by First Lady Nancy Reagan in an attempt to keep kids off drugs and alcohol. The program used very simplistic and sometimes misleading facts taught by teachers and staff. The Just Say No program drew much criticism for this very same reason, and many critics argued that the program did not educate kids at all, but instead drew them in by fabricated information and a catchphrase. This led to many kids growing up not seeking truth for themselves and trying to find any real information. I know that when I was little, I believed that if I ever smoked marijuana, I would become mentally handicapped, as my Ford teacher actually told me. In a sense, it really seems as if young kids, including myself, have been brainwashed, if you will, and urged not to think for themselves. It was not until I got much older that I actually started asking questions. Here's some real facts about marijuana. Contrary to popular belief, marijuana is not physically addicting. Medical studies rank marijuana as less habit-forming than caffeine, which makes marijuana one of the least habit-forming substances known. Also, according to the medical website WebMD, there has never been a recorded death due to marijuana overdose, which essentially means that marijuana overdoses don't exist. Compare this to tobacco, which kills an estimated 340 to 450,000 people per year, or alcohol poisoning, which kills 150,000 people a year. Or overdoses on legal drugs, such as pills, that kill an estimated 27 people a year. And aspirin, yes, aspirin, even kills an estimated 1,000 people per year off overdoses. Finally, there are 16 states plus Washington, D.C. that accept marijuana for medical use, opposed to 0 states for substances such as alcohol, tobacco, cocaine, and heroin, which are all proven to cause death. So why would 16 states allow a substance like marijuana to be used medically if it was harmful? Next, I will give you a few reasons why legalizing marijuana would be beneficial to the United States. The United States has a massive debt, and our government is constantly trying to find ways to cut spending in an attempt to lower debt. However, many of these cuts are hurting people of the United States. In many states, including our own, colleges and schools are being forced to make do with major spending cuts, which I am sure we can all appreciate. The estimated revenue, according to marijuana reform lobbyists and legislators, is as high as $1 billion annually in California alone. which would make it more profitable than corn, wheat, and cotton combined. Another reason for legalization is the massive failure of the the war on drugs. Even the Global Commission on Drug Policy panel issued a report that said, political leaders and public figures should have the courage to articulate publicly what many of them acknowledge privately, that the evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates the repressive strategies will not solve the drug problem. The war on drugs has and cannot be won. This is much due in part to the $15 billion in 2010 alone in an effort to stop the flow of drugs in the United States, including marijuana. Even prominent Texas congressman by the name of Ron Paul has been quoted saying, "The war on drugs is a complete failure." Along these lines, many marijuana advocates argue that legalizing marijuana would take the money out of the hands of drug dealers and cartels and put it into the U.S. economy. Finally, legalizing marijuana would create a huge amount of new jobs for the American people. If legalized, marijuana would not just be one government-owned company, but instead an entire new industry filled with opportunities for a multitude of different brands and companies. Think of it in common terms. If marijuana is legalized, the United States would not just be opening the door for a single company such as Coke and Pepsi, but it would be opening the door for a whole brand, which is, considering in this example, the entire soda industry. This would create a vast amount of jobs, opportunities, which definitely could not hurt in our economy. In my last point, I would like to address a few of the more popular arguments against marijuana. Most likely, the most popular argument against marijuana is the gateway drug theory. This theory argues that a person that uses marijuana is much more likely to experiment with more dangerous drugs such as cocaine and heroin. However, in this argument, marijuana is used as somewhat of a scapegoat. The same argument could be said for alcohol as a gateway drug. In fact, the United States government estimates 75% of Americans that use marijuana before any other drug never actually use so-called hard drugs. Another confusing fact that is attached to this gateway drug theory is that under the Controlled Substances Act, which was established in 1970, marijuana was rated as a Schedule I, or the most dangerous drug, along with heroin. However, drugs such as cocaine, opium, and morphine are listed as Schedule II. You don't even have to think hard to see that this doesn't make sense. And every physician on the planet will tell you that weed is a lot safer than these three drugs. The United States government is essentially saying marijuana is more dangerous than cocaine, opium, and morphine. But then how can marijuana be a gateway drug to something less dangerous? Another popular argument is that smoking marijuana causes lung damage and cancer, which is untrue. In 1997, UCLA study concluded that even prolonged and heavy marijuana smoking causes no lung damage. Cancer risks from common foods such as meat, salt, and dairy products far exceed any cancer risks posed by smoking marijuana. And furthermore, even the very small respiratory health hazards and cancer risks can be totally eliminated by ingesting marijuana through baked goods. A former United States Surgeon General by the name of Jocelyn Elders stated that marijuana is not a toxic substance. Finally, the last major argument against marijuana is that it is legal for a reason, and because it is a drug. Although frequently used, this argument is one of the most insensible arguments against marijuana. Prohibition in 1919 made alcohol an illegal substance and lasted until 1933. To call prohibition anything other than a failure is difficult. Largely due to prohibition, a vast black market opened up, which birthed the modern organized crime that terrorized the United States for so many years. Also, there are many legal drugs